In the world of transportation, safety is everything. I mean, we're talking about massive trucks on public highways, buses full of people. The stakes are incredibly high. And underpinning all of that safety is a strict drug and alcohol testing program. But have you ever wondered who actually has the final say? Who makes the tough, legally binding calls?
So let's just think about this for a second. In a huge company, who has the power to tell a driver, you're done for now, based on a test result? Is it the CEO, the head of HR, some outside company you hired? Well, the answer is probably not who you think. It's actually one specific person, in a role defined by federal law, who carries all that weight. Let's get into it.
And here it is, the Designated Employer Representative, or the DER. Now, this isn't just a fancy title somebody gets. It's a federally required position. The best way to think about the DER is like the air traffic controller for your company's entire drug and alcohol program. They're the one watching the screens, getting the reports, and making those critical, split-second decisions to prevent a disaster. So here's what we're going to break down today. First, we'll talk about why the DER is the ultimate decision maker. Then we'll cover the only 6 reasons you can even order a test. After that, we'll dive into the tough stuff, how to respond to bad results. And finally, we'll touch on how to keep everything organized and ready for an audit.
Okay, first up, let's really understand where the DER's power comes from. This isn't just about being a manager. It's about being the ultimate decision maker. And here's the absolute key. The DER's authority doesn't come from a company handbook or an org chart. Nope. It comes directly from federal law, specifically this document, 49 CFR Part 40. This is the official rulebook for DOT testing, and it spells out exactly what the DER, and only the DER, is responsible for. This isn't company policy that you can bend. It's a federal mandate. And we're not talking about small administrative tasks. The DER is the only person who can legally order a DOT test, the only person who can officially pull an employee from their safety-sensitive job because of a test result. And they're the one who gets those results and has to decide what happens next. You just can't pass these responsibilities off to someone else. It's all on you. This is such a critical distinction to understand. You might work with outside vendors, like a third-party administrator, and they are super helpful. They handle the logistics, the how and the when. They'll schedule the test, they'll manage the paperwork. But the DR, you, are responsible for the big picture calls, the why we're testing and the what happens next. They provide support, you have the final authority. All right. So now that we're clear on who the DER is and the authority they have, let's talk about when they actually have to use that authority. You see, the entire testing process is a big loop, and it both starts and ends with the DER. You're the one who kicks the whole thing off by authorizing a test. Then it goes through all the steps, the collection, the lab, the medical review, and then, boom, that final verified result lands right back in your lap. You are literally the bookends of this entire critical process. Now, you can't just order a test because you feel like it. That's a huge no-no. Federal law is crystal clear. There are only 6, and I mean only 6, reasons you can send an employee for a DOT test. There's pre-employment, random, reasonable suspicion, post-accident, return to duty, and follow-up. Every single test has to be justified by one of these 6 triggers, period. Okay, now we're getting to the absolute core of the DR's job, making those tough, high-stakes calls when a test result comes back and it's not negative. So just imagine for a second. You get that email or that call. A test result isn't clean. What's your very first move? In these moments, there is absolutely no time to hesitate, and the rules are not a suggestion, they're a command.
When it comes to alcohol, it's not just a simple pass/fail. There are 3 distinct bans. Anything below a .02, you're good. That's a negative. Now that middle band, .02 to .039, it's not a full-blown violation, but you still have to pull that employee from safety-sensitive duty temporarily. But if they hit .04 or higher, that's a violation, and your action is immediate. Remove them from duty and start the process of referring them to a substance abuse professional, or SAP.
So what happens if an employee just says no or tries to play games? Let me be perfectly clear. The rules see a refusal to test as the exact same thing as a verified positive drug test. There's no loophole. Failing to show up, walking out of the clinic, tampering with a sample, it's all a refusal, and it has the same serious consequences.
Now, the system does have checks and balances.
After a positive urine test, the employee has a right to get their second sample, the B bottle, tested at a different lab. But here's the catch. They only have 72 hours from when you notify them to make that request. It's a really tight window, and as the DER, you have to make sure they know about that right.
So when that violation happens, this is basically your emergency playbook. Step 1, immediately remove them from any safety-sensitive work. 2, talk to the employee privately. 3, hand them a list of qualified SAPs. 4, document everything, every call, every email, every action, with dates and times. And 5, if they're a commercial driver, you have to report it to the FMCSA clearinghouse. It's a strict, step-by-step process.
All right, last section. Let's talk about the systems and paperwork that back up all these critical decisions and, keep you out of hot water during an audit. For anyone in the trucking industry, the FMCSA clearinghouse is your absolute best friend and your biggest responsibility. It's basically a secure national database that keeps track of every commercial driver's drug and alcohol violations. The whole point is to make sure a driver can't just get a violation at one company and then go hide it when they apply for a job somewhere else.
And as the DOR, your duties in the clearinghouse are black and white. You have to run a full background check on every single new driver before they get behind the wheel. You have to run at least a limited check on all your current drivers once a year. And of course, you have to report any new violations or when a driver completes the return to duty process. These are not optional.
And all of this generates paperwork, right? So how long do you have to keep it? Just remember the numbers 1, 3, and 5. You keep negative test results for 1 year. You hang on to your clearinghouse query records for 3 years. But for the serious stuff, any positive results, refusals, and all the related SAP reports, you have to keep those for a full 5 years.
And honestly, this quote says it all. You can hire great vendors to help you manage the day-to-day process, but you can never, ever outsource the actual responsibility for compliance. At the end of the day, the buck stops with the employer, and the person who carries that responsibility every single day is the designated employer representative.
So let's end with this scenario. You're in the hot seat. An email just landed in your inbox. It's a verified positive drug test for your absolute best driver who is out on the road right this very second. Knowing everything we've just talked about, what is your first immediate non-negotiable move? The answer to that question is what being a DER is all about.